Does anyone know what the Ninth Commandment is? Josh.
You shall not bear false witness.
Correct. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So, we have been going through the second table of the law as opposed to the first, right? The first table tells us what? What does the first table tell us? Graham?
Things about God.
Things about God, but our duty towards God, right? What God expects of us towards Him. And then the second table tells us what?
Our duty towards our neighbor.
Right, our duty towards our neighbor. So as we've been going through the second commandment, second table, which is commandments 5 through 10, we looked over how to honor those in authority over us and how to honor those under our authority. That was the fifth commandment. We learned how to honor our neighbor's life. That was commandment number 6, how to honor our neighbor's wife or husband, but life rhymes with wife, so it makes sense. With the 7th commandment, and then how to honor his property with the 8th commandment. And then now we come to the 9th commandment, and we're learning how to honor something that's just as important as all of those tangible physical things, and that is his good name. Okay? We have to honor our neighbor's good name, honor his reputation. Right? As I'm sure you're all aware, reputation is very important. You could have the best skills, you could have everything in line in your life, but if people think you're a terrible person, they're going to treat you that way. Okay? Even if you're not. So reputation is very important. Now, of course, if your neighbor discredits his name on his own by being a criminal or a thief or a bad person, that's on him, right? You're obviously not at fault for saying that he's a bad person if he's open about being a bad person. But we are to abstain, or to keep ourselves from harming our neighbor's reputation through lying, right? This is the commandment that where lying falls under this, right? To bear false witness is essentially to lie about your neighbor. Now, every commandment so far has told us not just what we're to avoid, but also what we're to value, okay? We are not to murder because we're supposed to value life. We're not to commit adultery because we're supposed to value marriage. We're not to steal because we're supposed to value people's property, right? So if we're told not to lie, it means we should value what?
The truth.
The truth, right? We're supposed to value the truth. And each of these tells us what God values, right? We should only value something if God values it. So God values life because he is life. He's the source of all life. All life comes from him. He values marriage because it's a picture of him and the church. He values ownership because he owns all things and he gives each person what they have in their life, right? And we're not to take that from him. And he values the truth because he is the truth. So let's start there. Let's start with God and truth. Does anyone want to read this passage from the book of John? Aubrey?
For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Pilate said to him, what is truth?
All right. So the Gospel of John repeats this theme of truth and the person of Christ over and over again throughout his gospel and even in other books that John wrote. You see in John 14:6, does anyone know what John 14:6 is? I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me, right? So that's where Jesus says he is the truth. Then you have John 17:17, where Jesus declares that all the words of God are truth. He says, your word is truth, right? And this culminates right here when Jesus is being interrogated by Pilate. And he says his purpose is to speak truth. He says, I was born for this purpose. I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice, and I speak truth. That's what I'm here to do. And then Pilate cynically responds, what is truth? Right? And that's a rhetorical question. He's not genuinely asking Jesus this question. He is being cynical and hyperbolic. What is truth? Right? What is it anyway? And this dichotomy between someone who says, I am the truth, and the other person asking, what is truth? This represents the two sides of the spiritual war, right? One is committed to objective truth, rooted in God, and the other clings to chaos, nihilism, pure subjectivism, right? Everything is just up to the individual, right? Those are really the two sides. And all those who oppose God oppose objective truth, okay? But let's answer Pilate's question. What is truth? Give me a definition of truth. Bethel.
Truth is Jesus.
Yeah, that's a Sunday school answer. What does that mean, though? Okay, Aubrey.
Is not the lie.
Okay, but then what is a lie?
Lie is to not tell the truth.
Okay.
Lie is to not tell the story that has been
Verified.
no, the story that has happened.
Okay, that's a little better. Yeah,
Or what
Ryan.
happened.
Basically, the
Okay,
truth is
so-
what.
Hang on.
The truth is what is.
You remember that from my definition years ago, don't you?
No, I
Okay, good.
Or
I was good.
I mean, it's kind of that, and also sort of respect for kind of helping.
Oh, okay.
From what I looked
I didn't know that's what misdirection. Yes, Summer
I was going to say the truth is a statement about what is.
is a statement about what is. That's very good. So,
I like that.
Jonah, did you have something?
I was gonna say explaining what happened.
Yeah, that's certainly. Yeah.
Explaining what happened, like, exact details.
Okay. Yes.
So truth is an objective thing that is like a fundamental fact that cannot be changed.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah. So, going back a little bit, when Bethel said Jesus is the truth, that's why I say God is truth, right? And that's correct, but what does that mean? It means that God, being the one who created everything, defines reality, right? God defines reality because he made everything, and he continues to support everything, right? So if everything real flows from God, then God is the most real thing that exists, right? He's pure existence. He can never not exist. For him to not exist would cause everything else to not exist. Okay, so God is truth because truth is what accords with reality. Okay, which is basically what a lot of you said with your definitions, right? It is in line with reality, with what has happened, with what has objectively occurred within the world. Okay, so if truth is what accords with reality, that would mean that lies are false realities. Okay, when we lie, we are declaring something to be real when in fact it's a fiction. Okay? And considering God is the one who creates and defines reality, lying is a way of blaspheming God. Okay? To say, no, God, you don't get to define this aspect of reality. I do. Right? This is a very blasphemous thing to do. And so we see that God has made something, we see that God has made something and we cover it up with what we believe it should be. That's what you do when you lie. Okay? We are acting like God in order to tear down our neighbor for our own benefit. Because there's a variety of reasons why someone would lie. Okay? But since we can't physically create our own reality, we will do it with our words, right? We can't actually make what we want to have happen. But we can make people think that's how it is. We can spread lies, we can spread rumors, right? And at least in terms of the temporal world, that's almost just as good as if they actually did it. Now, there are levels when it comes to denying the truth, right? I said earlier, it's like you either have objective truth or nihilism and chaos. And yeah, when you take both sides to their logical conclusion, that's true. But on a subjective level, when you're talking to other unbelievers, there are levels when it comes to denying truth. Okay, there are some who deny any idea of objective truth. And they say we literally cannot know anything to be true, right? All we can know is our subjective experience, and our subjective experience may be different from someone else's. And so we can't really know that anything exists. Maybe we're in the matrix, maybe we're in the mind of some other deity, but we don't actually exist, right? Maybe we're hallucinating, right? All these different explanations. Those are out there, but generally, most people accept some level of objective truth because you kind of just have to live in the world. Or even if you don't believe it, you at least act like it because, again, there's no way to actually live if you truly believe there was no objective truth, right? You wouldn't be able to just go about your day if that were the case. So most people generally trust what they perceive with their senses is true, and they trust that laws of logic are true. Right? They trust what they can see and hear and taste and touch. They trust that things will happen in a certain sequence that have to make sense. And so this falls under the philosophy known as empiricism, that we can only know things that are true if we can observe them. Okay? And this is what I imagine Pilate believes as well. Right? Pilate is a pagan, so he does believe in the gods. But he's probably just this guy who says, what I can see, I will trust that. that. But in terms of all these, the questioning of moral truth and things like that, I'm not interested, right? Because there's so many different opinions on it. Okay? The truth that he's questioning is moral truth. And that's what far more people find themselves questioning, right? Morality, ethics, and religion, these are very heavily debated topics. And it causes a lot of people to just throw their hands up and say, I'll never know, so who cares, right? I'll just try not to be too awful of a person, okay? But this is also convenient for them, because if there's no objectively true morality, there's no true right and wrong, they can excuse whatever behavior they want. Now, of course, they will personally still have their right and wrong, right? They probably don't want you to murder them or murder someone they love or steal their spouse or steal their stuff, right? So they'll still have those objective moralities, but they're written on their heart by God, but they're suppressing them in unrighteousness, okay? But what Christ and the apostles and all Christians throughout time have claimed is that there is true morality, and it's according to God's word. So that's really the truth Pilate is getting at. It's not, there's no such thing as truth at all. There's no such thing as moral truth, right? But that's something we as Christians know there is, and we have to stand firm on that in a world that wants to make everything subjective. So that's truth. Now we're going to get into lying, but I want to take a slight detour into a side topic that I want to address real quick, and that's the question of, is lying to save lives permissible? There's the classic hypothetical scenario that either you've been asked or you've heard of people asking them, and that's, if you were hiding Jews in your house and the Nazis show up to your door asking for Jews, would you lie to them? Okay. What would you guys answer to that? Yes?
Okay. Can I give the explanation why?
As long as it's brief, yes.
Okay, so I would lie.
Okay.
Because it's for the good of saving someone's life.
Okay.
Because if I'm saving their life, I'm not allowing because I would basically be committing sin by allowing them to be murdered.
Okay.
Doing that.
Jonah?
I always said, for lying, if it's to, help someone else or, save someone else,
Mm-hmm.
or myself from, harm,
Mm-hmm.
then that's okay. But if I lie just to get rid of stuff, that's not good.
Okay. Zeke?
Definitely not, maybe, probably not here.
Okay, cool. Caleb?
I would lie, and then give them false evidence that they are here.
Oh, so you're still lying.
Yes.
Okay. Summer?
I would tell them.
I would say it kind of depends how, there's not an objective answer for every single situation.
Right.
But me personally, I would probably lie, because in the Bible there was instances of people lying to save people, and then they're blessed by God because of it.
Yeah. Then that's okay. Good. So yeah, I generally agree with the sentiment you guys just put out, and I have passages here that Summer just referenced that support this. So yeah, first you have the Hebrew midwives from Exodus 1. The story. Pharaoh commands them to kill any newborn Hebrew boy, right? And he's trying to do it subtly at first. He's like, when you're helping a Hebrew woman through labor, if she gives birth to a girl, keep her alive. If she gives birth to a boy, kind of go away and kill the child and make it think oh no, it was a stillborn birth or whatever, right? So he's trying to do that. But these Hebrew midwives disobey that. They say, no, we're not going to do that. And then when Pharaoh confronts them and says, hey, why are boys still being born and not dying? What do they say? Does anyone know? They lie, but what did they lie? What's the lie that they make
They're
up?
the pregnant women were just too fast.
Yeah, they're essentially, they're very, they're very strong, right? They give birth before we even arrive, okay? Which we technically don't know if that's false, but we can imagine it is, right? And so they say, hey, they're just so strong, they give birth to the boy before we can get there, so we can't, go off into the other room and kill it more subtly. And then Pharaoh supposedly believes this, and then verse 20 that I have here says, God dealt well with the midwives. And then later he says he gave them families because of this, okay? So God blessed them, and it makes it clear that the blessing of the midwives is, one, for disobeying Pharaoh's command, and then I would say in addition, lying to Pharaoh about why the boys weren't dead. Okay, now primarily it's the disobeying of the evil command. right? Everyone agrees that that was the right thing to do. But then there is the argument some make where it's like, well, should they have lied? Or since they lied, did God bless them for that? Or was it only for the disobeying of the commandment? I think the text makes it clear that he's blessing them for both. Because if God was actually upset at them for lying, but he just blessed them anyway, the text does not make that clear. It'd be very confusing if that was the case, where God's like, I'm just going to bless them even though I didn't like this thing. Now, God can do that, but that's not told to us here in the text, so we shouldn't make that claim. Okay, so there's the first example, right? The midwives lied to Pharaoh in order to protect Hebrew boys. Now, Pharaoh then just goes and says, fine, just chuck them in the river, right? We're not using midwives anymore, or at least we're not going to use them to kill Hebrew boys. But as far as their realm of influence, I think they did what was necessary. And then you have Rahab. Okay, Rahab, prostitute in the city of Jericho, and she hid Israelite spies from the authorities. Because this is Joshua chapter 2, verses 3 through 6. It says, Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come out to search all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So she lies to the soldiers, saying, Yeah, the men did come to me, but then they left and went out the front gate, and you should go chase after them. Okay? But they're actually on her roof. So this is a blatant lie. There is no clever wording. There's no, play on words here that she's using. She's explicitly lying to them. Okay? But she does this. Why? Why does she do this?
To save them.
Well, why does she want to save them? Esley?
Because she believes in God.
Yeah, she fears the God of Israel. She says, we have all heard what your God did to the Egyptians in the Red Sea, right? And I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm going to be on your guys' side, right? And she's blessed for that, okay? As James tells us, she proved her faith to the Israelites by doing this, right? It says she was justified by works, some of being justified in the eyes of the Israelites, not in the eyes of God. But she justified her faith in God to the Israelites by doing this, okay?
Also, she's in Jesus' genealogy.
Yes, she is the great-great-grandmother of King David, who is obviously then a forefather of Jesus. Miss Jessica, did you have something?
I think that it's not okay to lie to save lives.
Okay.
I think that both these examples are true from the Bible, but they're both not under the law. They didn't have the 10 Commandments yet when they happened.
Okay. Well, yes, Joshua did. Or sorry, the Rahab did. She personally didn't have it, but it was written down at that point.
She didn't have it herself, right? And I think that there is also stories of people who could have lied to get out of what was going to happen to them or others, and they didn't, and God still protected them. Because when you lie, it's because you're afraid of the consequences, right? You're afraid of whatever's going to happen next. And I think both of these examples, their fear is of the Lord, which is good, and in the right place. But then, the midwives lying about what was happening, I think that's just what happened. I think they just lied. I don't know if they were, justified in doing that. But I think about, for the Holocaust example, in the book Hiding Place, Corey Tenden's sister, Betsy, the Jews are hiding right under the table when the Nazis come in. And like, do you have Jews here? And she says, yes, they're under the table. And they laughed at her and they left, because the Lord can still protect, and his will is still going to happen no matter what. But Betsy knew that she was serving the Lord, and she wanted, it brought him more glory that way.
Yeah. So on the note of they didn't have the law yet, I don't think the fact they didn't have the 10 Commandments matters, because then you could say, well, Cain didn't know murdering Abel was wrong. He didn't have the 10 Commandments yet. Right, so the law's written on our hearts. They know lying in general is wrong. So I don't think that particularly discredits these. I do concede that, and I'll talk about it here in a second, that this is a judgment call you are making. And so there's some danger in that. And there also is the sense of, are you just doing it out of fear for yourself or for your own life? In these examples, it's for fear of other people's lives, of course. But yeah, no, I think that's, like, I'm not looking down on people that oppose this. I understand why, and I respect it in a lot of cases. But I think these examples are just, like, it's too blatant that God blesses them. It'd be one thing if they just did it, but it's explicit that God blesses both of them for doing this. People had hand raised, yes?
And I also feel like lying sometimes can show your lack of faith in God. It's like you don't have enough faith that He can actually deliver you, or someone else out of a situation because of that fear.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if that's like, if I fully buy into that argument, because you could, I understand that you could argue that, but I also feel like God gives us means to do stuff, and like that's how He helps us through stuff.
Right.
So it's not always just like some huge miracle. Sometimes
Right.
He's already given you the.
And there's also another example I did not bring up, but that's the fact that the Israelites use spies, and spies are professional liars for the military. But God says, send spies into, now spies are not scouts. They don't just scout the land. They are to go in and blend in with the population. So you can make the argument Christians shouldn't be spies. Okay, well, you can make that argument, but you have to somehow deal with God allowing, not even allowing, commanding Israel to use spies. Kerrigan? Yes. Yeah. So, and it's one thing we can all bring up examples of on both sides. We can bring up examples of people who lied and they still, whatever they feared would happen was still happened. And you can bring up examples of people that told the truth, like your example from the hiding place. What I'm arguing here is not who has the most examples. It's, in principle, is it allowable? Not will it work all the time? Because you could do the right thing, you could tell the truth, and the bad things can still happen. Right? Is it okay in principle? And I think these passages say, in principle, it is okay. In application, you may do it wrong, or God just may not want it to turn out that way. But He may be okay with the fact that you did that. But going on here, what makes, as we were kind of talking about, what makes people uncomfortable with lying to save lives is that it makes us a judge as to when there's a good reason to do something like this. And like I said, that's understandable because life is messy. You may lie with the best intentions and it may not work, or at least how you think it should. But this is where we have to remember the heart of the law over the letter, I think. The heart of the law is love your neighbor as yourself, right? And this commandment is do not bear false witness against your neighbor, towards your neighbor, like you're seeking to do harm towards them. I don't think the Hebrew midwives were seeking to do harm against Pharaoh. They just didn't want him to do harm against these innocent children. You could argue Rahab maybe was trying to do harm against Jericho, but even then I don't think so, because she was trying to, she said many people in the city feared God. She was probably trying to save them. And if that came at the cost of the Jericho officials, so be it. So I think in these cases, there is a clear love for neighbor that is at the forefront. It's not love for myself selfishly, and I'm going to disobey this. Yes, Jonah?
What about like leaving out information?
So lies by omission. Well, again, under normal circumstances of lying, that would be wrong, right? These are rare situations. Hopefully none of you ever find yourself in this kind of situation, unless you're like an undercover cop or something, of course. Outside of that, hopefully you never have to do this, because that'd be a very terrible situation to be in. Yes?
What about surprise birthday party?
Well, okay, that's another one. I was going to bring that up. Is it okay to lie about a surprise birthday party? Yeah, I think it's probably fine, because there's no harm being done. I mean, unless they hate surprise birthday parties.
Unless they have a heart disease and you don't know, and then they're like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't tell them, then you won't have to tell them. You can have things to think about. You
Yeah.
should tell people. they don't ask about it. They don't ask, hey, are you planning a surprise birthday party?
Yeah, but I mean, if it's like your spouse or something, they may have a sneaking suspicion. I could see that
But they
happening.
they didn't ask.
Yeah, if they didn't ask,
Not
sure.
that. You
Yeah.
just do wrong, you tell them.
Right, you're not under any obligation to tell them necessarily. Now, the one thing I will say, I don't like Santa Claus because it is straight up lying to children. It is. It's just straight up lying to children for no good reason.
It's to see them be happy.
You brought that lesson
Well,
with
it's
Santa
just-
punching.
Yeah, that's the actual Santa, Saint Nicholas. Santa's real. He's just dead. Okay, he was real. He's just dead.
And he was cooler because he punched a heretic.
Exactly. And he did also give gifts to children.
Dad instead of just.
Yeah, we should. Yes.
So my mom got my dad a gift, and she told him that she got him a gift, and then I wanted it to be a surprise. So I was like, "Oh no, she didn't get you a gift. I don't know what she was talking about." And then they're like, "Are you lying?" And I was like, "No, I'm not lying." And then the entire car way home. Like,
But that's kind of the fun is that you know that they know that you're lying, but you're just keeping it up
and
anyway.
then they're like, "Well, I don't believe you, but okay, we'll see." And then
All right.
whenever we got home, I gave him the gift, and he was like, "So you were lying."
Yeah. Okay, last comment, then we'll move on.
For Santa Claus, do you
Yeah.
not remember waking up in the morning on Christmas Day?
No, it was
and
fun.
being like excited because Santa came.
Yeah, it was fun, but I had to like come to terms with the fact that my parents like lied to me.
My parents never told me about Santa Claus. I was in first grade and I didn't know that the other kids actually thought Santa Claus was real. And I was like, he's not real. And the
Yeah.
other kids were like, yes.
No, that was a big debate. I remember as a kid, but I just figured it out on my own, and then I kind of like started playing along for my parents' sake, and so you're kind of just going around in a circle. Anyway, we're gonna leave behind this side tangent. I think it was important, but it's not the main point of this lesson. We're gonna get onto the actual sinful lying and the different kinds of that. So the first one that we're gonna cover is perjury. This is kind of the main sin that's in the forefront of the Ninth Commandment. Does anyone know what perjury is? Yes.
Context, I do.
So it's like, I forget the correct definition, but it's like if you're testifying in court and you lie.
Yeah.
About on the stand or lying to the law.
Right. Yeah, it is lying under oath in court. Right. That's the official definition, right? Now, perjury is one of the sins God expresses his hatred for the most. Just in the book of Proverbs alone, God mentions his hatred for perjury 8 times. And this is just perjury. I'm not talking about lying in general. Just perjury 8 times only in the book of Proverbs. And he explicitly says, I hate people that do this, right? I hate this sin. Okay? So we should know that we should know what this sin is so that we don't commit it. Okay? So he said perjury is when you lie under oath in trial, usually in order to falsely accuse someone of a crime. That's typically the only reason you would lie. Well, you either lie for that or to excuse yourself of a crime. But in other words, perjury is an attempt to twist justice towards your own ends. Okay? You want the force of the law to turn against someone who has done nothing deserving such a thing. Maybe they did something wrong to you, but it wasn't a crime, right? Maybe they just insulted you privately, right? That's not a crime. It's an offense, it's a sin, it's not a crime. And now you're going to try to turn the court against that, turn into some type of slander charge or whatever, right? Clearly taking things beyond their bounds. And we know that civil justice is supposed to be an extension of God's justice because God established the civil government for that reason, right? Since God gave them the sword. So perjurers are trying to really twist God's justice towards their ends, right? And this isn't just limited to lying, but it can include other things like bribery or threats towards the judge or jury, right? Like bribery, where you pay off the judge, jury to side with you, right? That's equally decried by God. In Exodus 22 or 23, 2 and 8 here, he talks about bribery. He says, you are not to bribe, right? All judges are to be free of bribes, okay? But if that doesn't work, there's also the option of threatening the judge and jury in order to get the verdict that you want, right? And this can even just be public pressure, yes?
Did you know that Al Capone actually threatened the jury?
No, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he was a mobster. Mobsters are kind of known to do this sort of thing. Pay off cops. Why are you raising your hand so sheepishly, Zeke?
I bribed a judge in mock trials.
What did you bribe him with? Monopoly money?
With candy.
How old were you?
I was like-
week.
6 months ago.
Oh,
Not 6, like 3.
Bribe someone with
It did.
17.
I mean, guys, we can bribe that
It
to
worked.
give us the money for the challenge. It's just that he'll accept the money and not give us.
you would just be paying for your own gift card at that point.
makes
Yeah.
You could just use that money to buy whatever you wanted
Just
to.
buy your own gift card.
Just buy the thing from the store. Why buy a gift card for yourself?
Can't you, like,
Yeah.
somebody comes if I bribe someone with pizza to tutor me?
To tutor. Well, no, that would just be payment at that point.
Okay.
Bribery is paying someone to lie, especially in a court case, right? That's paying someone to lie. Paying someone to do a service for you is not wrong. It's perfectly fine. That's what all business is. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, that's okay. That's one of the few things that's off the list, along with some other things. But so this can also just be like public pressure, right? I mean, we saw this a lot with a lot of the different trials that went on in the early, in like 2020, 2021, like the Derek Chauvin trial, Kyle Rittenhouse trial, if you're not familiar with those. There was a lot of public pressure to convict these men. Despite your opinions on them, they had not done as much harm as the public wanted to make you think they did. And in one case, they gave in. In the other case, they didn't. But in any case, this is a kind of perjury, right? You may not be in court, but you are trying to still manipulate justice towards your own ends. Yes?
Kyle Rittenhouse is the guy that shot a guy that was about to break into his home, right?
No, he was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and there was a big BLM protest or BLM Antifa protest going on. He was there, and he had a weapon on him. He was attacked, and he killed 2 men, shot another one in the arm. The 2 men that he killed, one of them was a pedophile, one of them was a wife beater. Okay, so I know there's a lot of discussion here on who's my favorite. If you want to be my favorite, if any of you end up killing a wife beater and a pedophile in one night, you'll be my favorite. Don't go hunting them out, though.
Edward, I'm on, at least I'm your favorite right now on the server.
No, you're not going to get a gift card for it, Zeke.
What will you try?
Don't go hunting them. But I'm saying if they come to you.
I know.
Okay, well, go tell the police then, if you actually do know one. Anyway, now, under the Old Covenant law, if a perjurer was discovered, if there was a false witness discovered in the court, they would be given whatever penalty they were seeking for the accused. So let's say I'm framing Zeke for murder. Okay, I'm a false witness. I'm saying Zeke murdered my brother. Okay, and throughout the court hearings, they realize they find some contradiction in my story. They figure out I'm lying. Well, the reason I'm lying is because I actually want Zeke dead. But I want the government to do it. That way, it's legal. But since now I'm found out, since I wanted Zeke to die, that's going to be treated as a murder case, and I'm an attempted murder case, and I'm the attempted murderer. Now I'm going to be put to death, right? That was what it was under the Old Covenant law. At least it's how it should have been, right? So this would cause people to think twice before falsely accusing people, especially in court, right? If you knew that it was potentially your life on the line and not just a slap on the wrist, maybe some jail time, or heck, even sometimes nothing at all, right? If you knew it was going to be something important, you had to really think this through if you were going to do it. Now, the reason this is taken so seriously is because think of the time period. They did not have security cameras. They did not have DNA testing. They didn't have fingerprint stuff. None of that. Witnesses, unless you had hard evidence of something, like say this guy killed my cow and you bring in the carcass of the cow, right? Unless you had that, it was really just witnesses. That was all you could have. Yes?
Wait, if they bring in the carcass of the cow, how would that prove that the man murdered it? Because it wouldn't really show that he...
No, but it would at least be, right, but it would at least be some kind of evidence. Like if there were stab wounds on its neck.
It proves that he had a cow and that it's dead now.
Yeah. So yeah, but there's some hard evidence, but really witnesses are the end all be all, right? Witnesses had to be there. You had to have at least 2 or 3 witnesses under the Old Covenant system. And pretty much most systems had that. And that was how decisions were made. Okay, so you could put someone to death falsely if you just had enough false witnesses. So to take an essential part of the justice system and cause it to be untrustworthy, that's going to wreak havoc on human society, right? We talked last week about, if you can't trust a businessman who, deals correctly and isn't defrauding you. Imagine that with the justice system, where you can't even trust the witnesses. You're on the jury, you can't trust any of these witnesses, right? How do you know if you're going to be delivering justice or not? That's a big deal. And so God takes it seriously. So that's perjury, and that's obviously a horrendous sin and crime. But that's not as common to the everyday person. What's more common is slander and gossip. Okay? Now, unlike perjury, this is not limited to the courtroom, though it can be taken into the courtroom, especially slander. This happens to all of us, and all of us may be guilty of participating in this. Yes, Jonah?
Is it kind of like starting rumors?
Yeah, slander is, yes. Slander. Does anyone have a definition of slander, aside from just starting rumors? There's a little more than that, yes?
Is it not being formal? Yo, what's up, Joe?
No,
That's like,
that's slang. Yeah,
Slander, what is that?
slangder. Summer.
Defacing someone's character on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, debasing someone's character on purpose, right? Or maliciously lying to others about someone. Okay. So the legal definition of slander, because slander is a crime, or at least it's a civil crime, is making false statements verbally in order to cause damage to someone, right? So you are intentionally doing this to cause damage. So in a court, if you're going to bring up a slander charge, you have to prove some kind of damage, right? Whether that's monetary, physical, whatever. There has to be some kind of damage that came as a result of this slander.
So it's emotional stuff, or?
It would really depend on the case and, different kinds of evidence.
How do you prove that?
I guess if you had to if a therapist had to see you, like if you were genuinely having emotional breakdowns after, there have been cases of here, I'll get to that in a second, but, that's slander. The print version is libel, right? If you print something falsely, it's not slander, it's libel. I remember that from the Spider-Man movie when J. Jonah Jameson says that. But this would include any kind of harmful lie, whether it's taken to court or not. Okay, God does not limit slander just to what is in court. Now, what kinds of lies would cause damage to someone's reputation?
Saying that they've done something illegal or harmful, or if it's someone who's donated generously to something, them saying that they did it for a specific purpose, not just for charity.
Money laundering, something like that. Yes, Kerrigan? Right. Yeah. Especially public figures, more than likely. What else? What other kinds of lies would destroy someone's reputation? Cheating, right? Yeah. Typically, Jonah.
If they're on a job site, and you can say that you saw them steal something.
Right. To damage their occupation, Aubrey.
Whenever, I take proof. Whenever I see students cheating using ChatGPT during a test, and it's unfair to everyone else.
Right.
She took a photo.
I still have the photo. I took a photo of someone cheating, and I showed Mr. Dahlman. And yeah.
Nice. Did the cheater find out you did that?
Oh no.
Okay,
She
good.
did it again, but I didn't figure that time. Mr. Dahlman saw.
Women can cheat on things too. I don't know if you know this.
Well, I kid you not. Split screen, ChatGPT.
Insane.
The test is recorded.
ChatGPT says.
Yeah, so really anything that makes a person look untrustworthy or debased, meaning very evil, that would really cause someone's reputation to be destroyed. And it's actually funny you bring up AI because, Aubrey, what are you staring at?
Oh, deepfakes?
Yeah, with AI and deepfakes, there have been that's going to cause some new additions to slander laws. In fact, Summer, I remember at one of your debate things that I judged, it wasn't a debate you were in, but it was a different one I judged. That was the topic of do we have to have new laws for AI? And we've already seen cases of women, and not even just celebrities, though with celebrities too, but of women being deep faked into pornography and suing for slander, right? And again, it's not even just famous women, right? Technology is advancing to that point where it could just be, as long as you can find their picture on Facebook, right? You can put it into a deep fake. Yes, Zeke?
I'm pretty sure there's court cases recently where somebody tried to submit an AI video as evidence.
Yeah. And you got to think, especially if they're trying to submit it as security camera footage. Security camera footage typically is not very high definition. So that can allow the AI to be not as, realistic. Because it's like, oh, well, it's security camera. It's going to look a little bad. So yeah, like AI is going to bring up, it's got a lot of great possibilities, but it's definitely going to bring up a lot of new kinds of questions and debates. And it already is, especially when it comes to criminal cases. But God is unmistakably clear that he does not tolerate slander. He says, whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. Plain and simple. Okay? And like I said last week, we mentioned how fraud causes communities to fall into distrust, right? If you can't trust the people you do business with, that's going to wreck a lot of society. Slander is the same principle, but for anything. A society can't function without trust. Okay? And slander destroys trust. When societies have lower trust, there's a greater propensity to violence, to theft, to divorce, to tons of other sins, right? There's actually statistics that measure high trust societies versus low trust ones. Like Japan is a very high trust society. You go to the Apple stores in Japan, you can take the iPhones off the rack. They're not corded in, they're not chained down, nothing. You can just take them off the rack because there's a large amount of trust in that society, largely because they're very homogenous, right? It's really just Japanese people.
There's
Yes?
also completely unmanned stores where you just pay for it and take it yourself.
Right. It's like, we're locking up our deodorant at Walmart.
You know what?
Yeah.
First the Lego sets, then
They must really.
The Lego sets are worth it. Keep those things safe. They're already worth like an entire house payment on their own. So.
Yeah, I'm just gonna steal because they can.
No, like it's like $40 for like $40 for like.
Yeah, it's insane.
And it's not even that.
Okay, so that's slander, right? And it all starts with the spread of lies just to hurt someone's reputation. Now, gossip. What is gossip? Gossip's a little bit different. Josh.
Gossip is like you find out somebody did something bad, and then you tell everyone about that bad thing, or even just making up.
Yeah. So it could be both. It could be true or it could be false.
Like behind their back.
Yeah, it's really a matter of, does the person approve of this being told to people or not? That's really it. Yes.
Could you say that slander is a type of gossip?
Yeah, I would say slander definitely leads to gossip most of the time. But not all gossip is necessarily slander in the fact that it's lying. It's probably malicious, but it may not be lying all the time. Yes?
It also doesn't necessarily have to be like in front of someone, like behind someone's back. Like you can just gossip in front.
Right. It depends on, is that person okay with that information being spread? As opposed to, no, do they want that to stay private? So yeah. So gossip spreads personal information, whether true or false. Right? By personal information, I don't mean like your bank account number or something, because that's just identity theft. I mean like personal things. What?
Spreading, how is your bank account number identity?
You can take money.
Your name.
Do you have a bank account?
Yes.
Okay, you should probably not tell the bank account number to anybody.
What about address?
Yeah, address. I mean, that's called doxing. Typically, like if you're, you don't need to change it. Just don't tell anybody. If anyone calls you asking for your bank account number, just hang up the phone.
It's blind to.
Especially if they have an Indian or Nigerian accent. No
If
offense.
they have a Nigerian accent, bro, trust me. Don't.
Yes, Aubrey.
And you never talk about personal information. Like if you're talking with your friends, you wouldn't talk about, hey, my visa account.
Yeah. So, and that's a side. I was just being funny there for a second. Obviously, when I talk about personal information, it's really personal, like emotional things, right? I mean, not even emotional is the word, but just private things. Situations that should be private. There are things a person once kept private, but they're told to countless people who don't need to know it, or the person doesn't want them to know about it, right? And even though we all know this, we're all aware of this. Sorry, did you have something?
So like, say I tell my friend one of my brother's address, Like, and then they go tell people. So that's an example of gossip.
Yeah, that would be if you didn't want them to tell someone else your address.
I didn't do that.
You didn't do that?
My friend did.
Well, why did you tell the other person the address?
No, my friend did.
Oh, okay.
To a sub.
Why did to a what?
To a substitute teacher.
Oh,
Because he doesn't like that teacher.
he told your address to a substitute
No,
teacher.
He told the subs teacher to me and some of my friends.
You told the substitute address.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
Does the
That's.
substitute
That's-
teacher not want the information?
I'm assuming not.
No.
So just don't do anything with that information.
Burn it. Burn what? Burn the house? Burn the address?
No. Anyway,
Isn't there mind,
most people know gossip is wrong to some extent. At least they know it's not the best thing to do. But it is the favorite pastime of many. A huge business even. There's gossip sites and all that. Now, why is that? And I am actually genuinely asking here because I don't get the appeal of gossip. So someone absolve me of my ignorance. What is so appealing about gossip? Aubrey.
It's
Yeah.
giving information, it keeps your life more knowledgeable. You'll be able to know more and you'll get to know people better, like if it's good or not, if they're a good person. But you'll always just like lean towards talking to the person in the end, so it'll lead you to meeting new people. But like sometimes it'll be like bad.
Okay, I wasn't asking for a sales pitch.
Aubrey, you want to be like that old lady in town that knows every single secret.
You know, you can just go talk to people without having to gossip. That's
I know,
not,
but
conversation is not gossip.
listening to
So
it,
I
not
don't
talking
know
about it.
social skills.
Okay. Josh.
Gossip, because you're often focusing on bad things, I think it makes you feel better about yourself.
That's very true, I think. Yes.
Because people gossip also to like entertain themselves.
Yeah. I guess what I was asking is I don't get why that's entertaining.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yes.
This might be a bit extreme, but if you can be like invested without having to, know the person or be like emotionally invested in their life.
So it's like watching a TV show.
Yeah, it's like watching a drama, but you don't have to be involved with the drama.
Sometimes you can just
Okay.
like listen in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
see.
like, well, did you hear what
People don't have
Stacey
lives.
said? So
That may be part of it too. I mean, this is probably why reality TV took off in the early
Yeah,
2000s.
that's exactly it.
Which most of it was not very good.
There's
So, okay. Yeah, so like I said, I don't get the appeal of gossip. I'm sure I've done it at some point, but it's like not something I would think is entertaining or fun. But I do think you were onto something, Josh, when you said it allows people to ignore their own problems and their own faults. It allows you to think, well, at least I don't have their problems, right? At least, even if your problems are actually worse, it at least allows you to shift your attention somewhere else. Now, this is a key question. What is the difference between gossip and just telling people about a person? Just relaying information. What's the difference? Is there a difference? Jonah?
Like telling people information is like, say I want to have a birthday party, I tell Zeke to tell Ryan. That's the example of sharing with them.
Right.
Like if I only want like Zeke to come, I tell him and he tells Ryan. That's gossip. Without.
Yeah, that could be. I guess I was talking more like if you have, it's information you have about someone else that you are going to relay to someone else. Aubrey?
it's definitely more formal. Like if I am section leader and I want to post a on something or something to get this next month together, I would, hey everyone, I would like to, hey, I don't have his number. Can you give that to me or ask him for me because I'm busy this weekend? But to gossip about someone is be like, hey, did you see what? Yeah.
Okay.
What about prayer requests?
Ooh. The Christian version of gossip.
Yeah. Other people's prayer requests that you share in a group because you want everybody else to know.
The simple solution is just don't remember people's prayer requests. Of course, that's another problem too. Yeah, I know, that's the other problem.
Or if you do ask her, you just say it in a different way. Maybe
Right.
To like make people think that.
Yeah, well, telling all of you not there, right? Because I was like, Jonah, if he's going through a really hard time at school, we need to be praying for him because people are bullying him at school, blah, blah, blah. Like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can just ask. You can also just ask.
The moral of the story is still in know that shouldn't be shared.
The moral of the story is that when you give prayer requests, you don't have to have an entire speech.
Yeah, but none of you guys really give any speeches, which is
I have
okay.
I'm
sure I have too. I have too.
Question my prayer request though, and then I have to. Because
I don't-
Hey, can you pray for the kids with COVID? Like, and then you're like, wait, why? And then you explain.
Yeah.
I think the gossip is the
Yeah, okay, so the answer is intent. What is your intent in relaying this information? Sometimes someone's personal info needs to be shared even without their permission to either protect them or protect others, right? Think of like reporting a crime, right? Obviously, you should not ask the criminal's permission or the suspected criminal's permission before doing that, because there could be lives or something else on the line. Or you could also see Jesus' instruction on church discipline in Matthew 18, right? The first step is you confront your brother yourself, right? So now it's just between you and them. There's no sharing of information. But it says if they don't repent, get 2 or 3 others. Well, in order to get those 2 or 3 others, you have to tell them whatever's going on here without this other person knowing. Okay? So in the cases like that, it is okay to share that information. That's because you're trying to bring some conflict to resolve. You're not just spreading the conflict. Yes?
I also think there's 2 or 3 other people need to be able to keep that as secret. Not
Yes,
tell anybody else.
right.
You can't just tell somebody randomly.
Right.
Something that,
Exactly.
that you can trust.
Correct. Right. And it's also just if people are relaying information, like if they say that, I don't know, like say you're talking to someone, you're like getting to know them, and they say that their parents are getting divorced or something. It's like, okay, well, that's someone else's information, but they're obviously not saying that. They're probably not saying that to slander their parents. They're just trying to convey that they're going through something difficult right now. So that could be an example of where that's okay. And you're just listening to that, trying to empathize with the person. You're not going to take that and spread it. At least you shouldn't. We're going to get moving. I actually thought this was going to be a shorter lesson, but then I underestimated the conversations that would come out of this. So lastly, we have hypocrisy. This is another way we can break the Ninth Commandment. So we can also bear false witness about ourselves to others in order to make yourself appear better than them. Okay, and this is exactly what the Pharisees did in Jesus' time, and many others continue to do this today, and we're probably all guilty of it to some extent. Here in Matthew 7, you've all heard this verse. It's one of the most quoted verses, even by non-Christians. Judge not, that you be not judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So the mark of hypocrisy is when a person completely writes off people for not meeting a standard that they themselves don't meet. Okay? Now, we should judge people's actions. And in fact, I'm not even going to say we should. We are going to judge people's actions. It's inevitable. You're going to do that. So we're going to judge people's actions, but we should do it according to the law of God, not according to our personal taste, not according to what we find acceptable, right? We should judge actions according to the law of God. But when we do that, we have no reason to boast either, because we have broken the law of God, probably on a daily basis, okay? We are not in the place to judge a person's entire existence. And that's the judging Jesus is talking about here, right? Because human beings can judge pretty harshly, right? Civil judges are there to judge a person's case, but they're judging a person's actions in order to punish them accordingly, right? If you've stolen, they're going to deliver a punishment that, hopefully atones in a sense for that theft. Or if you murder someone, they're going to deliver a punishment that atones in a sense for that murder, right? Or even elders making judgments on church discipline, they're doing so hopefully to bring the person back into communion with the church, right? So no human being has the authority or knowledge to tell a person they are or will be damned. Now you can tell a person if you don't trust in Christ, you're going to be damned. But that's just a statement of fact, right? That's the case for all humanity if they don't trust in Christ. That's different than saying you are going to be damned no matter what, okay? You are not in that judgment seat. No one is. You cannot make that call. But the purpose of judging a person's action is to hopefully bring them to repentance and a love for God. So, because notice the difference within the analogy Jesus uses. The person who has the log in their eye only wants to go around pointing out others' flaws, right? It says, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? So this guy's only going around noticing the specks. He's not trying to take them out. He's just saying, you've got a speck in your eye, you've got a speck in your eye. It's when the log is removed, then they don't just go point out the speck, but they try to remove it as well, right? So that's the difference, right? The person who holds on to their hypocrisy just wants to look and judge. The person who's aware of their state as a sinner and repents of that now actually wants to go and help other people remove the logs and specks out of their own eye. So hypocrisy leads us to commit numerous other sins as well, right? We see this with the Pharisees. Their hypocrisy led them to perjury and murder of the Son of God. Right? Hypocrites will do anything to keep up appearances, including silencing those who can see through them. Okay? Now, we'll wrap up here. How to love the truth. So we've gone over the lies. How do we love the truth? Because that's the way we combat lying. That's the way we combat being a false witness. First, remember where you came from. Right? Remember where you came from. It's easy to fall into hypocrisy when we forget that we were pulled out of the same muck and mire of sin that other people are. Colossians 3:7 says we used to walk in all kinds of sins, but now that Christ has killed sin on the cross and given us new life through the resurrection, we are to turn from them. Okay? We should not live in the past or in any current sins we commit. We should not live there. We should not dwell on the past all the time. But we should also be honest about our character and honest about who we were. Okay? And that will keep us from hypocrisy. At least it helps to keep us from hypocrisy. Because it's a lot harder to bring harsh judgment on someone for doing sins that you used to do. If anything, you have a lot more sympathy for those people. Next, do not be too quick to judge a situation or a person. Proverbs 18:17 says, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. Okay? A common tactic among false witnesses is to state their case first and loudest so as to gain sympathy from the public. Right? You see this a lot of time in a lot of big court cases these days, right? It's always who runs into the room crying the loudest. That's who the sympathy goes to. Whoever can be more emotional, whoever has the saddest story, whoever has the most victim points. Maybe they're a woman, maybe they're black, maybe they're gay, maybe they're all three, whatever, right? Do they have the diversity intersectionality points? Okay, we're going to empathize with them, despite the fact that their story makes no sense. Okay, that's what this verse is talking about. A smart judge will wait and hear the other side first, because it's easy for someone to run in saying, he did this to me, he did that to me. And for people to say, oh, I'm so sorry, you justice, believe all women, right? Don't even need to look at evidence. But then you actually look at the evidence, so it's like, oh, wait, no, this was not a crime. You just made it up. Or you mostly made it up, right? Cool and calm heads usually prevail in discovering the truth. But cool and calm heads don't make money. That's why sensationalism and emotionalism, even in cases as serious as court cases, are the way things often go. But that's not how we should be, right? We have to be calm and collected. Yes, we can get emotional, especially if it's someone that we know. But if you find yourself getting emotional about it, take a step back, right? Don't deliver a judgment. Recognize that you're maybe in a compromised position. That's why we don't let, like if a judge's son gets murdered, we don't let that judge the court case because he's obviously very biased. It's called a conflict of interest, right? You have to have people that are not totally unbiased, but at least not obviously biased towards one side judging the case. And this is important when there are severe consequences on the line. When it's someone's job, when it's someone's marriage, when it's someone's life, you don't just go with whoever's being the most emotional. You have to think logically. And then expense that out. Don't comment on things or people you know nothing about. Okay? This helps us counter gossip because most people that gossip don't actually know the situation. And if they do, they're just keeping the lie going anyway. okay? Because it keeps the rumor weed from growing, right? You actually don't have to have a thought out opinion on everything. I know this is like heresy in the age of the internet to not have an opinion on everything, but you really don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to have an opinion on most things, okay? You really just have to have an opinion on things that matter to you and things that are obviously important. So don't act like an expert on topics you don't know anything about. And again, it's very easy to do these days. Doing this will not only keep you from lying, but it's also going to keep you from looking like a fool once your bluff is called by an actual expert, or at least someone who's more educated. Right? Humility is essential to this, especially if you're someone who likes to talk, right? Who likes to give their opinion. There may be times you've got to really suppress that because you're ignorant of the situation, but you just may really want to say something. It's like, well, you don't know, don't talk. Okay, that's been my advice to a lot of people, right? Just know when to shut up, know when to not talk. It's so great. Like for me, that's usually not a problem. I'm usually decent at keeping my mouth shut. Okay, but I acknowledge that's a personal thing more than it is I'm just very spiritual. No, it's just I'm not tempted in that way. I'm tempted in other ways, but not that way, right? And lastly, fulfill any promises you make. Okay, this ties in with the third commandment, right? The third commandment, don't take the Lord's name in vain. Talking about swearing oaths, right? If we want people to trust you, you have to prove that you can keep your word. False witnesses will talk a big game and then make bigger excuses when they don't follow through. Instead, speak a few words, but make up for it with your works, right? Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no, and let your works follow through.